So I need to make bread for my husband, but I haven't fed my sourdough starter in over 3 months. This thing is hungry. Let's see if we can revive it. First, I drain the hooch. For each feeding, I scoop out 100 grams of starter, add about 80 grams of all-purpose flour and about 20 grams of rye, don't ask me why, I read it somewhere, along with about 100 grams of warm water. So equal parts sourdough starter, flour, and water. And mix it all up, put it in a jar gently covered in a warm spot on our counter. 12 hours later, I could see some bubbles. It was in the process of being revived, but the starter is supposed to be doubled in size, and we definitely weren't there yet. So I fed the starter again the exact same way as last time. Once it was all mixed up, I let it hang out on the counter. I covered it overnight for another 12 hours. 12 hours after this feeding, it was alive and well, so I got started mixing the bread. Since it takes about a day and a half to make a sourdough loaf, I always double the recipe. And this is not a rustic bowl loaf. This is a sandwich sourdough loaf. So I use 100 grams of bread flour, 120 grams of unsalted butter, 18 grams of sea salt, 24 grams of sugar, mix it together. And then once that's all mixed up, we add 510 grams of warm water and 200 grams of sourdough starter. I start by mixing this with my dough whisk, but eventually get in there with my hands to really work that dough together. Once fully mixed, we let the dough rest, covered by a damp towel for about 30 minutes so that the flour can soak up all that hydration. Not pictured, but you can use this time to feed the remaining starter and stick it back in the fridge for the future baking day. Once 30 minutes is up, sprinkle a bit of flour out onto your workstation, dump out that dough, and get kneading. I wish I had a KitchenAid mixer, but honestly, it's therapeutic to knead it together with my hands. We're going to lightly cover this in plastic wrap and place it in the warm spot in the kitchen overnight or for about 10 to 12 hours. In that time, you can see that it has doubled in size, which means the sourdough leaven is working. Scoop it back out onto the counter and press out any air bubbles that you see. Then begin shaping. I'm making this long and narrow. I like to use this 13 by 9 inch Pullman loaf pan. You could also split it in half and put it in 2 different 9 by 4 inch loaf pans. All of these supplies are linked in my bio, by the way. Butter up the pan, lay the loaf inside, cover in plastic, wrap for about an hour or two in a warm place. Preheat your oven to 450 or 500 to get a higher oven spring, and once it's ready, score the top with a bread lane to allow that steam to escape while it bakes. Once the bread is in, turn down the temp to 375 and bake for 50 to 60 minutes or until everything is golden brown and cooked through. Let the loaf cool for 2 hours before cutting into it so you don't end up ripping the side when you slice it through like I did, but the bread is still super soft on the inside, deliciously crisp on the outside. It's a complete success. Follow along for more.